Okay.
Well, this needs no introduction because you and I have been discussing this for years, and have only become more excited as in our different ways as we have gone along. So I am just more excited every time, and you, of course, are doing all the suffering. And how happy are you now at the way it runs, and just observationally?
Okay, I'm really happy about how the game is coming out because I had a lot of doubt, and about a lot of them I discussed with you 2 years ago.
Oh, yes.
During those 2 years, I've mainly done playtest, and I observed a lot of people playing the game, and in particular I was interested in the feedback concerning what the game left on them,
Yes.
how they felt during the game, and what was the turning point in the game that allowed them to understand something deep and important, and how this changed their perception of the events that they either knew or didn't know.
One of the interesting points that a colleague, a professor, established to me was that she had taught in a program, I believe actually here in Italy. We were Americans,
Okay.
and she had taught in a program in Italy for a while. And one of the things that amazed her was that there was an evaluation of the class given to the students long afterwards, weeks afterwards, and maybe even months afterwards, like 6 months afterwards. And she said that the insights to her were incredible. In the States, you only do the evaluation on the last day of class.
Okay.
And professors are always frustrated because we know that the material has to be processed, it's supposed to be important to them. The students have very different perspective of what is and isn't important. And she said, this is ridiculous. We have no idea how the students are truly responding to our classes because it's all later that they think about it. So it's the same thing here.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I ask 2 kinds of feedback, and I ask them in 2 different times. I ask a feedback in the here and now, immediately after the end of the game, and then I let some days pass, and then I ask a feedback with a cold view.
Yes.
And not so close to the game view.
Yes.
Because to me it's important to understand what the game left on the players after some days or even more has passed. Because one of the main things I think that is interesting about this kind of game, not my game only, but this kind of approach to the game, is that it can change you in a positive way.
Yes.
It can make you understand some things by making leverage on your emotional intelligence. Can I call it this way?
Absolutely, yes.
And this is so extremely powerful, more powerful than the mainly notional or rational way of thinking.
To me, this is an important part of many of my designs, obviously in the political work.
Okay.
And I have observed it many times and often very profoundly. And I'm very confident that this is a real phenomenon, that playing games of this kind is going to facilitate. We don't know for whom in the group, and we don't know in which way, but we know that this is an instrument that has that kind of power. As I like to say, particularly for Spione, that if you ask a group of people what they think of communism, what they think of the Cold War, what they think of this or that or this or that, they will give you answers that are perfectly positioned in the political dialogue of today.
Yes.
But if you play the game, then you and they will find what they are struggling with and what they find interesting or sympathetic that they didn't think was sympathetic, or learn things as well, bits and pieces, little things. And what's best is to play, at least in those games, and I'm not talking about Stonewall, but in these games of mine, is actually to not play just once. I would like Spione to be actually played in 2 sessions. and Shahida can be played in multiple sessions, and people run off and go learn something. They actually do what the internet has shown us people never do.
Yes.
Which is instead to go off and learn something they didn't know, not just for confirmation of what they think they know. And they come back waving things over their heads and saying, this is the car, this is what that car would have looked like, or things like that. Sometimes trivial, sometimes very important.
Something like that happened with my game too.
Yes.
Because in particular 2 years ago, when I started the main playtests, a lot of people I played with didn't know anything about what Stonewall was.
Right.
Not only straight people, I mean also LGBT people.
Yes.
In particular the youth.
Yes.
And this was strange for me, because even if this is an American history event, this story is universal.
Yeah.
And the inception that it made is true for all the LGBT communities in the Western and not only the Western world.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that this kind of story is unknown, to me, is inconceivable. And the effect that I saw is that a lot of the players that played the game before or after the game actually went to the internet to understand more about the game,
right.
And about the clues that I give during the game.
I love the way people say, "Oh, well, that's obviously some fictional thing in the game," and then they come back and they're like, "That happened."
Yes.
Yeah.
There are 2 or 3 papers in particular cards in particular, that always leave people with age-0 on the table, and they say, this is not possible, this is the 60. I mean, it is the day after the day before yesterday. Yes. This can't have been this way, and instead it was.
The one that I think many people I know do know is that if a character in Stonewall, in our game, if we play, could well have been subjected to 2 or 3 years of continuous electroshock treatments.
I have a card detailing that.
Yes, for example. And somebody might say, well, that's crazy, that's just in some movie, right? It's no. If they were...
But you know what? The electroshock was not the worst thing. Mm-hmm. And that is really horrifying. Mm-hmm. I mean, they did the even worse thing, like using torture.
Yeah.
Like the waterboarding. The what's the name? Waterboarding.
Yes.
The water torture.
Yes.
Chemically induced.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
How can you relate to something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even if you have your own stereotypical idea about what being gay or whatever LGBT may be, how can you think of them the same way after you know that?
Yes, I think it's very important, especially if you think of the stereotypes of the time, which have persisted
still today.
Yeah, but were very strong in the 70s and 80s. Okay, the limp wrist, the kind of grinning, cringing kind of thing.
Yes.
All of those. Well, what do you expect from somebody who lives in terror of an experience like that, or has been through it? What do you expect except for a combination of terror and defiance in the way that they act? It's not as, it makes a lot of, all of a sudden you're like, I would behave like that. Anybody would.
One of the interesting things that I observed during the playtests is that when you make clear in fiction that what you do is not legal,
right.
What you are is not legal, or better, it is not that homosexuality is illegal, but everything connected to homosexuality is illegal.
Yes, they have surrounded it with law. Yes.
Yes, but not just the law, because you are a criminal for the law, you are mentally ill for the public health, and you are a sinner for the society.
Yes, and the important thing about that is that the protections that any of those should have from in isolation. If you are just a criminal against the law, you are still supposed to have some protections from certain kinds of abuse. But with all 3 of them present, then you have none of the protections within each one.
And this is why for some gay people the concept of elective family is so important.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important for a lot of LGBT people to find family in the community.
Yes.
Because there is no other family.
Let's take a look at procedure then, because I'm
Okay.
a little bit interested. I'm not sure I want to be walked through how to play in an explanatory way from the beginning. Maybe we should jump in.
Okay, so what exactly would you like to see?
What if we have been playing for a little bit? What do we have scattered all over the table at that time?
Okay, so we would have a table. Just a second, please.
Sure.
Too much paper.
I was going to say, it's great to have all your things in a nice organized packet, and then you have to take it apart, and it's a mess again.
Yes, that's one thing that I hate.
Yeah.
It's not important. So we have this thing. This piece is only in Italian. I'm sorry, but
no, it's good. That's
there
fine.
is
Yeah, I
a
get
little
that.
few text. So
We have our acts. This is all
Yes.
immediately. Yeah.
So we have
story cards. We've got. Okay, go.
story cards, the acts, and scene cards.
Yes.
So what we would have now, if we were here, so in the middle
okay.
of the game,
Sure.
is a social contract we had. So we at the table read what the game is about and how it is expected to be played.
I am okay with all of that. We are going to assume that everything up until here
Okay, sorry.
is functional and running.
Okay,
So
sorry.
now we are right here, and what do we have?
When we are
Cards
here,
are here and here.
yes, cards are here and here.
Okay.
When we are here, one player reads what we are supposed to play in this act.
Example.
This is Italian, of course. Just a second, sorry.
No, it's good.
I mixed them and it was organized.
I know, I
and then
know.
I made
Then
a
you
mess.
touched them. You touched
Yes,
them. Yes.
that's exactly what happened. And I hate it when it happens.
Yeah. I have a flat spot. You can hand them to me.
Yes, please. Yes, this is the scene. We are about to read this one. So, this introductory paragraph tells us what the environment and the actual situation is. So, please excuse my English. If you lived in a small town, everyone knew everyone else. It was not possible to have a relationship with a person of your own sex without risking of being discovered, sooner or later. Going to a place like New York gave to queer folks the opportunity to connect with other queer folks and find people who did not really care if you were gay or not. Life magazine proposed articles depicting the Greenwich Village as a very liberal place, frequented by people called homosexuals. It was very simple to find places you might meet them. You just needed to go to the churches around the village, where the priests screamed the worst invective against those places of perdition and despicable folks. They were more effective than a tour guide. Christopher Street was a place where you could meet other homosexuals without having to consume fleeting sex. In general, the folks who were completely open about their homosexuality were only the youth who had nothing to lose, like the young ones who had escaped away from home. Most of the others were usually very discreet in living their homosexuality. The tone of this act is bold and of discovery. Then I say that during this act we will play two scenes. The first one outside of the Stonewall, and the second one inside of the Stonewall Inn. The tone remains the same for both rounds of scenes. In both scenes, show how your character comes in contact with the emancipated gay reality of the village and how they have made the village their home.
Okay, so that's what we are doing, and we all have listened to this.
Yes.
And
the instruction on how to frame a scene have been given before.
And we are fine. We are already doing it. We know how.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is assumed that we know how to do that. Thank you. So what we do now, for example, I am the one beginning. I take my character. Let's assume that the character is this one, is Timothy.
Here is Timothy. I will glance at him just for a moment. Now.
Yes.
Right. So he's a marginalized teen with traumatic backgrounds, completely
Yes.
alienated from his backgrounds, and is
Yes.
basically just looking for friends and has nowhere to go.
Yes, and is scared to death of what his father thinks about him.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes.
And is scared to death to lose his family, to lose whatever it is important to him. Okay, so here and 3 shown cards here.
So I'm going to do this.
Yes. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And the cards are a strong smell of urine, the metallic taste of blood in the mouth, and a sudden blackout.
Son of a bitch. Okay. So those are our showing cards.
Yes, you have to use those in your scene. You choose one, and you have to use it in your scene. It may be a direct inspiration for setting up the scene.
I completely, or maybe a detail, who knows what. Yes. Yes. I get it.
It may also be metaphorical.
Yes. Yes. I get it. So it's my scene, or yours. You're playing Timothy.
Yes, okay.
And you will pick one. Go ahead and do it. Just pick one.
I would take a strong smell of urine.
Got it. Okay. So you are going to talk about
How Timothy gets in contact with the village reality.
right. Okay. It gets going. As we play, how does this procedure of interaction proceed?
It goes this way. Everybody at the table has characters. Every player has one main character and secondary characters. Now I have to declare to the other players what I want to get from this scene, who I want to be present in this scene, and then we start. So the objective and people present needs to be clear, because the other players play either opposition or support. They need to know what I'm going through,
Right.
so they can help me to
Right.
get straight there. I will have to close the scene when I see that I reached the
Yes,
object,
okay.
or when I see that it is
It's
not
not
reachable.
going to happen.
Yes.
Okay.
For
So
example,
great.
let's say that you have another character.
I'll take Jeff
Oh yes, I like that.
because he's recommended for
Yes,
I will take a quick look.
Jeff is one of the characters I like the most.
Oh, I'm one step further down the road from Timothy.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, not
Same road, but yeah.
Not just that. You are also black.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
That sets us apart. Because one of the main themes emerging from the game is the intersection. I don't know the words in English. Intersectionality, is that a word?
It is a word.
Okay.
And it is a word
Of
that
the-
has
of the
undergone
oppression.
some- Yes, of course. And it is a word that has become distorted, or at least taken on multiple different meanings and
Okay.
arguments. It has created much chaos. Even though
Sorry.
it's supposed to even though it's supposed to be positive, right? But
In this case, it is
yeah.
intended to be positive.
Yes, of
Positive in the
course.
way that.
So use it. So yes.
Okay.
yes.
It highlights that being gay is not the same thing as being white and gay or black and gay.
Yes, yes, perfect. I totally get it. And, in one of Harlan Ellison's early works, which is collected in a book called, I believe, Memos from Purgatory, maybe, he allegedly ran around, this is in the early 60s, with a street gang pretending to be one of them,
Yes.
and then wrote about it, and I don't know how much is fictionalized, it's a little sensational. He also included a part where he was jailed briefly, and he has a lot, it's very gritty, it's all very
Okay.
gritty, but it's very, very mid-60s when he looks at the black queens in jail that night, and he's horrified by them.
Of course.
But this is what the liberal / radical young white man was saying in 1965. I will quote it to you. You will be amazed. It says, "Of all of the crimes that the white man has imposed on the black man, homosexuality is the worst." How many wrongs, how many onions layers, how many skins do we have to peel back on that statement?
Just too many.
Yeah, but remember, this was from somebody who considered himself a liberal and a radical and an anti-conformist.
Yes.
So hello, Jeff. This is your life.
Yes.
That's he could have. All the things from the attitudes I'm thinking about. So I can see them swimming up very powerfully in this context.
Take into account that this kind of information is given before.
Yes.
When we introduce characters.
Oh, sure. No. So Jeff is walking and talking.
Yes.
We don't need to discuss this now.
I would say that in the scene, Timothy has come here for the first time. It's his first time here in the village. He never dared to come here. So this day, he didn't go to school and came here alone and scared. And he just knew by voices on the street or disgusted voices he heard at home when his parents thought that he was not listening,
right.
and that homosexuals meet in bad places like public restrooms.
Yes.
So
or the balcony in the opera house.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a very famous New York situation in the 50s and 60s.
But he cannot go to the opera house.
Of course.
He's too young.
Yeah, that's where the middle class men go.
Yes.
Right.
So he is left only with one option.
Yes.
So I want to see what happens when he is before the public restroom, looking around scared, and what happens when he meets Jeff.
Yes.
And what the interaction is.
And so then I would play Jeff, and we would talk and do all these things. And other people, how many people are roughly playing? Perhaps
3 to 4.
3 to 4. Okay, so it's pretty nice, tight little batch.
Yes.
Okay.
And more than 2 characters, obviously, may be in a scene, and you don't have just named characters. You can also have secondary, not named characters.
Right.
So in that case, I should say who I want and ask for who wants to play him.
Sure. No, I see that. Okay.
Like, for example, the parents.
Right. Perhaps, yes.
It always happens.
Dad hunts Timothy down, today.
Yes. Once I played Timothy's dad, and after that game and that night, the friend I was playing with made an apology to me.
Yes.
Because we talked a lot about what it meant to have a queer situation in a family which is conservative.
Yes.
And what it felt like living with a father that don't understand you and for whom you are a monster.
Yeah.
And it always came up this observation that at some point you can always cut your ties with them and go away, or make him shut up. Okay? I always try to explain him that this is not how it works.
No, I don't think so either. Yeah.
This is not how it works, because when you're in the middle of it, it's difficult.
Yeah.
So that night when we played test at the game, and this interaction is one of the main reasons why I have all the safety net implemented in the game, because I don't want to see what happened that night again. I played Timothy's dad very close to home, too much close to home.
Right.
And at some point, the other player was not able to speak.
The father was so terrifying.
He only
and so
looked down.
Yeah.
He said, "Yes, Dad. I agree, Dad. I'll do what you say, Dad."
Right.
Then we made a pause because
Yes.
he needed a cigarette.
Yes.
And after the game, he told me that.
Yeah. Well, you are in an amazing position for this issue. I still want to talk about the game as procedure, but it is impossible not to use the opportunity to say we have a game which explicitly has no lines and no X cards, and now wants functional tools in that context.
Yes.
And this is going to be a conversation after yesterday, especially.
Yes.
You were not the only person I talked to. There's a lot of people. We are going to have an online meeting We are going to have an online lab about that issues with every issue, every part of it. So we are going to do that. But for to say a game with no lines and a game with no X card, now let's be functional and honest. That's what we are going to do. And we don't want to turn us all into, we don't want to hand out therapy coupons, right? Here's, you get 20% off with the therapist, you know. No, we don't want to do that.
Obviously not.
Yes,
Obviously not.
But so what do we do? And so I'll put a period on that right now and say that's our task. Your task, but ours as participants and willing lab rats.
Willing, sorry?
To be I am ready to be a laboratory rat.
Okay, yes.
And say, okay, I may be the person where you discover that particular technique didn't work. So therefore I am shattered and bleeding, but I'm here for that purpose to see. And so that's where you are now in many ways. And it's kind of a strange contract to ask of your playtesters, which is we are experimenting with safety rules, which means that some of them aren't going to work. Some of you crash test dummies are not going to get into, are not going to be looking very good.
That is why my first playtests were strictly done with people I deeply trusted.
Oh, sure.
And with whom I had a straight and open conversation. And no doubt at all.
Right.
I've made a little less than a dozen playtests before I tried the game, always with me in game,
right,
with someone which was a little outside of the main
that
circle
of trust. Yes.
And when I went there, I already had the safety rules.
Right.
And the safety rules themselves are not all my doing.
Right.
I have received help from people bigger than me in this regard.
Sure. Yeah.
So, for example, the techniques of the Nordic
the tunnel stuff and things like that you mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, again, to be continued. Back here, let's say we go ahead and we have our situation. Jeff and Timothy interact. Other characters are brought in either off the sheets or else. We will learn more. The knowledgeable person will point out what does it look like in the room or in the Stonewall. What does it look like? And we get a deep sense of place from this.
You want to see the scene inside the Stonewall, so to see how it looks like to be there.
Yeah, well,
in regard. Okay.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is that could have happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's say, for example, that we have this scene, and it ends up with scared but curious Timothy, who accept an invitation from Jeff to go in a place where they can talk,
right,
and not just piss.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes. So
another thing that usually shocks people playing is that I have a map of the Stonewall. It is placed on the table, and while preparing the game, you understand that this place was really not desirable.
Right.
Because it was run by the mafia.
No, of course. No, the place is long.
There was
story,
no safety exit.
Right.
Because it was locked.
Right.
People were not allowed to escape.
Right.
Obviously. You could only enter on invitation. There was not running water.
So it's basically, wow. Yeah.
So
it's a weird little stone medieval fortress spot.
Yes, sexually transmitted disease were transmitted by sharing a glass.
Right.
Washed in the same water there for hours.
Right. So we are talking, OSHA would not approve. That's the health service in the United States, so yes.
Okay, so when people understand this, and they think, oh, but it's 69, right? Yes, it's the day before yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, I think, some very strong, some very strong things happening to talk about. So,
and there is another strong thing here, because in this place, in this bubble, Timothy may discover that he is allowed to dance with Jeff.
I was thinking about that. That's what I was definitely thinking.
And this is an illegal thing.
Yes. Oh yeah, I know. And so therefore, I would be. I was already thinking that was the big transition. Not that we would say, "Oh, okay, now they're inside and they're dancing." No, just to be doing this would be an amazing ending moment, or close to the ending moment of actually.
And this is where things are going to go bad.
Right.
Really bad. Because during the second act, what we are playing is the setting up of a fragile but safe situation. And you understand how fragile it is when you change act.
Sure. When I get that. The intro to this is almost, I can almost see its potential for the, as we say, for the other shoe.
Yes.
Right? That's the first shoe. We all know there's another shoe that's going down there.
Oh, so I was forgetting one thing. Once the scene closes, you have to draw a card, a story card.
Yes.
You can use these cards to learn something about the Stonewall era and have a suggestion for setting up events.
Those are over here at the top of this page. Yes. And are they? Do you just draw the top one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's always the top one. I'm planning to make more, obviously. So here you see what I put on the line are characters, situations, or events.
Yeah.
So that you can know.
Yes.
Obviously, this is a work.
This is Craig Rodwell's history.
Yes.
Yeah, is one that I found fascinating. To break with the Mattachine Society, to me, is an enormous topic.
The Mattachine Society was
it's a assimilationist,
an homophile association, but it told people to homologate.
Yeah, exactly. It is assimilation.
Assimilation, sorry, yes.
And also submissive.
Yes.
Yeah. So
they was ready to accept the compromise, to accept that they were ill, but still functional.
Right. There is the transition I like to see or think about is that their slogan that they would wear is "Gay is good," and then for the first time at the Stonewall riots, the first time ever spoken was the words, and briefly, "Gay power."
Yes.
And the transition from one to the other
is another thing.
Yeah,
totally.
Oh, yeah. So that transition is like right there. So
yes, and I particularly liked what I read about this this person, and this is what happens if you in game have him.
Right.
So it is another safe place.
Yes.
But as all the safe places in this game, they are bubbles.
Yes.
And they are deemed to explode.
Yeah.
And badly.
Yeah. So I'm almost afraid to take a look at the third act, but I'm going to trust you that first of all I can kind of see what's coming, and I know you are ruthless, so I know that the third act is going to do what the third act has to do. So yes. I totally get it. And so with this structure in place,
yes,
I think what I would fear in terms of design is over-engineering. If you had a victory track, around the edge, and then you had the tokens, and then if you got this thing, then you get to take that token off and flip the token over, and it's a different color now. And all these sorts of things that introduce what either quantification, checking in to see if, and also more randomized elements. I am a big supporter of randomized elements in play for lots of reasons.
Here there is not a big randomization.
Well,
it is only clues.
Okay.
It's only inceptions.
They look pretty big to me. And
yes,
so what I'm trying to say is that the big danger of such things is to overdo it and to make subroutines and to force the players to to pay attention to too many things. And so, therefore, the randomization that you have with the cards at the moment combines with the soft randomization of what the players have decided or feel like emphasizing in their characters, which is its own form of randomization. And so you get those together, and as the designer, your question is, as you continue to playtest, is that enough? Do we have the mix of content, imposition of, oh, now I have to deal with this, and consequence from it? Do you have it so that you feel you've got your acts? When you play, do you get your acts?
In order to do that, the randomization is limited because everybody draws story cards, but you can only play 2 per act. So no more than 4 will be played.
Right, and remember, choices of other people that you cannot control are random for you.
But
So,
it is
which
okay.
is good.
But
That's
it's
a good thing.
It is okay because the cards, in particular, enact events that are true for all the table.
Yes.
So it's like it is kind of thematic because something that is a choice imposed from another entity is something that you have to pass through,
Yes.
even if you don't want to.
Right.
All the characters here inside didn't want to pass through what they had to pass through.
Right.
But they didn't have a choice.
Right, right. I hear you, and I think it's exactly right. I'm saying that I'm not saying yes or no. I'm saying that as a designer, as a designer, you're in the position of deciding as you continue whether you have too much of it, too little of it, or you're feeling just right, and now you can proceed to the next decisions.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah, and I think you are in. I think that's a fine place to be thinking about that. Now, at this time, I want to ask, when you look at the epilogues, and you have played a lot now, so you have played a great deal of times. Looking back at your library of epilogues.
Okay. Your library of?
Your library of epilogues.
Epilogues, yes.
All the games you have played. What do you see? Do you see the kind of somewhat shell-shocked developing insight, and also the sense of, whew,
yes,
that was that. This epilogue, you can see, okay, this is what happens, this is the outcome of that game. And you are the only person who has this library.
Yes, because I've made too many playtests. Yes.
Right? What do you think of your library now?
I think that from a certain point on, in particular when I went outside of my comfort circle, this was the guide to understand if I was on the right track or not.
That's why I'm asking. Yeah.
And it helped me a lot because the first 2 or 3 playtests helped me by the epilogue to address something that did not work as I intended during the game. After I pulled the strings, the epilogues went straight to where I was expecting them to be.
Yes, fascinating and insightful, yes. Tell me a little bit more then about anything that right now you find to be a procedural, you are still kind of wondering or poking at or adjusting what aspects of procedure, or are you pretty happy at this point? There might still be a little thing.
At the moment, it's not a matter of procedures, rather than a matter of content.
So in that case, you are at that point where you are moved from just, okay, here are the buttons and here are the things and here are the steps and what to say. Here they all are. I've got it. Mostly.
Yes.
Right? Now.
Mostly. I can change little things, but the flow is that.
Then right now.
The workflow is that.
You are in a moment which bears understanding what the moment is, which is that there's understanding a game. There is, let me put it this way. If you are sitting down with a group of people,
yes,
and they have not tried it, so you don't have veterans with you, you are in the position, and it's a bad position, of playing the game. So you yourself are playing.
Yes.
Explaining the game and teaching the game. And to confound any of those is the curse of the person when you are writing the book. You cannot do all three simultaneously. It is impossible.
I see, and it's painful, not just impossible.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
painful.
it is. And so so therefore you are in a terrible situation of saying, now what the fuck do I write?
Yes,
And
I know that feeling.
And I will perhaps maybe share with you, having done it wrong and with no light to guide me,
Okay.
you know, with only martial arts and
Okay.
teaching science to guide me
Yes.
in terms of pedagogy and all the ways that those go wrong, and that to guide me.
Yes.
Those are the only things I have managed to work my way through, and it has taken several game titles for me to feel comfortable with my thoughts on this and my process, which is stay in your document. Your document is just for you,
Yes.
and you are writing it and changing it and fixing this rule and all that, and you don't care how it sounds. You don't care what you are leaving out that you just know
Yes.
and will never forget or never get wrong. You never mind all that. And it's just, and you keep going, and finally
It's a
when you-
technical sheet.
Yes, and and it's really, again, not even for someone else. So you are doing this, and then you say, okay, I could write this up as a beautiful, like an engineering summary of this game. I could. Written for the person who says, how does this game work?
Okay.
And I will explain, all these things. Or you could write it up for the person who is just wants to play. Just needs to play. What do I do? That person is you see, that person says they know the game, and they just need to reference the points of what to
Yes.
do. The last thing they need is explanation. The last thing they need is, anything like that. But what the book does, if you read them, is you say, I am also trying to teach this game to people. So they are not just playing. They are already cursed. They are not just playing. They are learning. And if only someone else could take care of that problem, and the only players I ever have already learned, I would be perfectly happy.
Yes, me too.
So, but we have to write our damn book to
Yes.
teach. This is a pedagogical device.
And this is not easy.
Right. The only one that I think, my best one for this is Trobe.
Okay.
That is my pedagogical.
And it is really clear as a textbook.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, however, not the textbook in the sense of an encyclopedic summary
No,
of all the working
no.
parts.
I mean, as a
but
book to read
that's
cover
right.
to cover, understanding what it says.
Yes, but it is also procedural.
Yes.
Do. It's an
Yes.
instructive. It's like a good lab textbook, procedural instruction, and so that's what you say. Okay, there's only one guide you have in order to know how to do it. What do you do at the table when you are with that group of people? What do you tell them? What do you do? And you don't want to waste time, and you know there are missteps that you have made in the past that you are not going to do this time. Take them through it, and then go back and say, now what the hell did I say? And you suddenly realize there's that whole speech that you used to give that this time you didn't. And maybe that particular speech isn't a good step in that spot after
Yes.
all. And so even though it makes so much sense, from an understanding point of view, it makes wonderful sense. From a procedural point of view, it is just a rock in the road.
Yes.
So that's your new process, a completely new author process, to start from scratch and say, this is what to do. And that's your new task, I think.
Yes. And
To make the break actually helps. To actually make the break in your head.
I had some troubles in this regard because the first time I wrote the manual, it was intended for people who could play test it, and so I needed to be as clear as possible, obviously, because I needed to teach people to play the game, obviously, and but I realized in the end that what I wrote was not a technical manual. it was more than that. So I will have to cut pieces and put them into appendix, because every time I wrote do that this way, I also wrote why, and this is not useful.
That's right, because again, it's the three things. And
useful.
so maybe I was just helpful to kind of parse them
Yes,
for you,
absolutely.
and now you will
Yes.
think about it and decide
Yes.
what to do. So,
I have to reorganize this whole
well,
thing.
I would put it slightly differently. You kiss that wonderful thing that you suffered over so bad, and you
Yes.
pat it on the head, and you put it to bed,
Yes.
and now you say, "Here's my blank page. Now what do I write?" You know, what
Yes,
do I write?
it's something like that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But great. So I think that's about where we are with the
Yes,
session.
yes, this is it. I mean, I know the game works. There are still some little details here and there that I'm trying to get straight, but the game works.
Yes.
So I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah.
And
So
in
it's the-
particular, some days ago, I witnessed a playtest, not led by me. So it was suffering.
Yes. Yes.
obviously.
I know.
Obviously. But in the end, the epilogue was my guide,
Yes.
as always. And when a girl at the table told something like, well, now I know what Stonewall is.
Right.
Now I know that the next time I hear someone saying that prides are not useful or are just shows,
Right.
I know that I will punch them in the nose.
Okay.
So
Well then.
that was
Yeah.
my okay.
All right.
She understood it
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Okay.
Right. My marker is
Okay.
done.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I
Thank you.
really like being updated on this, and it's really time for me to be one of your lab rats. So
Okay.
let's organize some time.